Welcome to Books in Brief podcast. Today we're embarking on a deep dive into an essential guide for navigating modern professional life, Never Eat Alone, and Other Secrets to Success, One Relationship at a Time by Keith Ferrazzi and Tal Raz.
And this whole deep dive, it's really built around a philosophy that just fundamentally challenges the myth of the self-made professional.
Right, and Ferrazzi didn't come up with this in some boardroom. The idea was actually forged when he was a kid. He was caddying at a wealthy country club.
So he was basically watching successful people in their natural habitat.
Exactly. And what he saw there was this powerful, almost unspoken mechanism. He realized that these incredibly successful people, they weren't just competitive, they were deeply collaborative.
They were constantly funneling jobs and investments and even academic opportunities to each other's kids.
Yeah, he saw a whole system of mutual support just operating right there in plain sight.
And that is the critical insight. It underpins the entire book.
Yeah.
Ferrazzi concluded that to reach your highest goals, it matters less how smart you are, how much innate talent you have, or even, where you went to school.
If you don't get one thing.
If you don't grasp that one crucial fact that you absolutely cannot get there alone, then all that talent, it eventually hits a ceiling.
I find that so compelling because it takes this dreary concept of networking, which feels so cold and transactional.
Totally.
And it reframes it as something rich and genuinely human.
Precisely. The goal here isn't managing transactions, it's building real relationships. Ferrazzi calls this connecting, and it's all about sharing your knowledge, your resources, your time. Really your empathy with other people.
Always trying to give value first.
Always.
Yeah.
That shift from asking what can I get to what can I offer, that's the entire engine of the book.
Okay, let's unpack that engine then. It starts with generosity, which, it sounds almost soft-hearted, but the structure behind it is this hard principle of reciprocity.
Right. When you genuinely care for people and help them, that goodwill, it does eventually find its way back to you.
And it's such a powerful counter-narrative to that whole lone wolf or rugged individualism idea we celebrate.
Especially in these super high-pressure competitive places like, the Harvard Business School he describes. So many people are operating from a place of scarcity.
This mindset shift is just so critical. Ferrazzi tells this great anecdote about a colleague, I think his name was David.
Oh yeah, the David story.
Who just perfectly captures the wrong way to think. When he was asked to make an introduction, David refused. He actually said he needed to save that for myself.
He saw relationships like a pie, right? Like if he gave a piece away, he had less for himself.
And that just completely misunderstands what influence is. If you see your relationships as collateral, you can spend or save, you will eventually run out.
But the book's point is that relationships are like muscles. The more you use them, the stronger they get, the bigger your network, and therefore your pie becomes.
The line that really sticks with me is, it's the exercising of equity that builds equity.
That's the whole thing, right there.
Okay, I appreciate the focus on radical generosity, but let's be real for a second. In the professional world, where's the line? When does being generous just become enabling? Or when do you risk being, exploited?
That's a really fair question. And the key is intentionality. Ferrazzi is not advocating for just aimless giving.
Right.
He advises building systems, which we'll get into, like the networking action plan, to make sure your generosity is targeted towards people and goals that actually matter to you. If your giving is aligned with your own mission, it stops you from burning out.
So the goodwill you're generating is channeled back toward your own purpose.
Exactly. The reciprocity doesn't have to be instant, but it has to be acknowledged. And that leads directly into strategy.
That's a perfect setup, because just connecting randomly isn't efficient. You need a direction. So once you decide to abandon that whole solitary effort idea, how do you build a network on purpose?
Ferrazzi says you have to be a disciplined dreamer. And he lays out this 3-step process for your mission.
And step 1 is foundational. Find your passion. He calls it your blue flame.
Yeah, he quotes a successful saleswoman who defined a goal as a dream with a deadline. But you can't set the deadline until you know what the dream is.
To define that dream, he suggests this dual assessment. First, you look inside, list your real joys, your skills. But then second, you have to look outside.
You have to ask people who know you best, your friends, mentors, family, what they see as your greatest strengths and your weaknesses.
That external feedback just refines your direction so much faster than sitting alone and thinking about it.
You see that power of an early dream with someone like Michael Dell. When he was asked about his ambition, he didn't talk about quarterly reports. He talked about being a kid and staring at the huge flagpoles outside corporate buildings.
That flagpole was his symbol of success.
It was his initial driving symbol.
Yeah.
And that vision feeds right into step 2, putting goals to paper.
This is the networking action plan, or the NAP. This is where, wishing becomes engineering.
It's a great tool. You start with these big 3-year goals. What does ultimate success look like for you? And then you work backward from there.
Right, into detailed 1-year and 3-month A and B goals that all lead up to that bigger mission.
The book tells the story of Jamie, this friend of the author, who had a Harvard PhD but was just miserable in academia.
And by using the NAP, she figured out what she really wanted was to teach high school history.
And then she methodically built the network she needed to land a tenured job in Beverly Hills. The discipline of writing it down is what makes it real. The book says, an unwritten wish is just a dream. In writing, it's a commitment, a goal.
And then the final step, step 3, once you have those clear written goals, is to create a personal board of advisors.
Because you can't do it alone. You need that external perspective to challenge your ideas, vet your strategies, and just keep you going when you hit the inevitable roadblocks.
Success is always a team sport.
Which leads us right to the biggest hurdle for most people, the fear. That emotional barrier of asking for help, the fear of rejection.
Ferrazzi argues that audacity is often the only thing separating two people who are equally talented.
And his examples are so human. Think about his father, a steel worker, who just went and asked the CEO of his company, Alex McKenna, for an appointment to talk about a scholarship for his son.
That one audacious act didn't just get him a meeting. It completely changed Ferrazzi's educational path. It put him on scholarship at a top private school.
The lesson there is just so profound. You owe it to yourself to ask.
Yeah, and another great little story is when his father saw a broken big wheel toy in a wealthy neighbor's trash.
And he just asked if he could take it to fix for his son. It wasn't about status, it was about need. The insight is so simple, the worst thing anyone can say is no.
And often, giving someone the chance to give is actually a gift to them.
Exactly. Ferrazzi carried that lesson with him his whole career. He tells the story of approaching Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, on a bus at Davos.
Which led to a business relationship later on. The key is just acting on the opportunity.
But, and this is a huge but, that action is never a true cold call. His whole strategy is designed to make sure every single contact is a warm call.
Let's get into those tactics. He uses the example of trying to reach a guy named Serge Del Grosso at Sony. There are 4 rules for a successful warm call. Rule 1 is convey credibility.
You have to establish trust immediately. You do that by mentioning a person or an institution they already know and respect, a mutual friend, a company like WebMD. You're basically drafting off their reputation.
Okay, then rule 2, state your value proposition. And this is the one people miss all the time.
All the time. You have to clearly say what you can do for them, not what you want from them. So in the example, the pitch isn't about selling digital content. It's about how that content will help Serge sell his new products.
You center it on their goals, which leads to rule 3, impart urgency and convenience.
Right. Don't be vague and say, let's get coffee sometime. Be definitive. I'm going to be in town next week. How about lunch on Tuesday? You make it easy for them to say yes.
He even suggests calling at unconventional times like 8 a.m. or 6:30 p.m. because that's when busy executives might actually answer their own phones.
And finally, rule 4. Offer a compromise. You aim high, but you always leave a safety net.
So if they say no to the meeting,
you pivot. You suggest a minimal follow-up instead. Something like, even if you don't want to hear about digital content, I'd be grateful for just 5 minutes given our mutual friend's admiration. The goal is always just to get that next step, no matter how small.
So moving beyond that first contact, once you're inside these big organizations, you have to understand the ecosystem. And that means understanding the immense power of gatekeepers.
You mean executive assistants?
Exactly. And treating them like they're just an obstacle is a career catastrophe waiting to happen.
Oh, he learned that the hard way with the Mary Abdo and Pat Lecanto story at Deloitte. When his assistant clashed with Pat Lecanto's gatekeeper, Mary, Ferrazzi was instantly frozen out.
Access dried up, expenses were suddenly getting micro-scrutinized.
Until Pat Lecanto had to sit him down and say, Mary runs this place, you have to treat the gatekeepers like the boss's minority partner.
Making allies there is so crucial. And similarly, you need to identify the super connectors.
These are the people whose job is literally to know everyone. Headhunters, journalists, lobbyists.
They should be cornerstones of your network because connecting is just their default mode. They're always looking for new value to add.
But the book makes a really important counterpoint here. Building genuine connections rarely happens at those sterile, formal networking events.
Yeah, he says those are often filled with people who are just there to take, not to give.
Instead, real connection flourishes through shared passion.
I love this idea. You build relationships faster and deeper outside the office, doing something you actually enjoy. It could be food or a charity or exercise.
He talks about that executive VP whose best networking spot is the YMCA at 5 in the morning.
You're connecting with entrepreneurs and customers while you're both sweating it out on the Stairmaster. That shared struggle builds loyalty way faster than polite office chat.
And for structuring those deeper connections, he's a huge fan of the dinner party, specifically using what he calls anchor tenants.
These are guests who are outside your normal peer group, right? A successful artist, a journalist, the COO of a cool company.
Exactly. They bring the electricity and make the conversation genuinely stimulating for everyone there. It attracts other high-level guests.
And co-hosting those events, which he did with a friend at the Bel Air, is a brilliant strategy. It splits the cost and the effort, but it also intentionally mixes two valuable networks together.
So both hosts benefit from the social arbitrage you're creating.
Which leads perfectly to the ultimate goal of all this connecting, becoming indispensable.
And Ferrazzi says you achieve this through what he calls social arbitrage.
Which is really just a fancy way of saying you become the bridge. You're the person who brings two people together from different worlds who will genuinely benefit from knowing each other.
It's the opposite of being a collector. It's being a distributor. He talks about introducing the CEO of High Sierra Bags to the head of marketing at Reebok and a consultant he knew.
He wasn't selling anything. He just created three-way value.
And that's the core insight for real sustainable power. The book says, indispensability comes from being a switchboard, parceling out as much information, contacts, and goodwill to as many people in as many different worlds as possible.
Your reputation becomes tied to your ability to lift other people up, but that power is only maintained by one thing: rigorous follow-up.
He calls it the hammer and nails of your networking toolkit. And because most people are just terrible at it, being intentional with your follow-up immediately puts you in, like, the top 5%.
Timing is key. Follow up within 12 to 24 hours of meeting someone.
But it's more than that first thank you. You have to systematically use what he calls pinging, these regular, low-effort check-ins to keep those relationships warm.
And the best pings are value-add pings. You're not just saying hello. You're providing something useful.
Yeah.
The story that perfectly illustrates this is about his friend, Kent Blossel.
Right. Years after they first met, Ferrazzi's system reminded him it was Kent's birthday, so he called and sang happy birthday.
And Kent was just audibly emotional on the phone.
He admitted that no one, not even his own large family, had remembered that year. That one small, personal gesture, tracked and executed with intention, created this incredible, unforgettable loyalty.
It wasn't a business transaction. It was genuine care that built real, lasting equity.
And that story just highlights the true power of this whole philosophy. Connecting is a lifelong skill. It requires intention, it requires generosity, and it requires the audacity to both ask for and offer help.
Whether you're looking for mentors or you're taking on mentees yourself.
Right. And if we connect all this to the bigger picture, the author leaves us with this really provocative thought. He compares the life you build not to some straight, linear career path, but to a quilt.
We find meaning and love and prosperity through the process of stitching together our attempts to help other people find their own way.
Exactly. The relationships we weave become this exquisite, endless pattern. But that process, it requires you, the listener, to be really honest about how much time you are truly ready to spend giving before you ever think about getting.
Thank you for listening.
If you enjoyed this brief exploration of the book, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel for future deep dives. New book insights are coming soon. See you next time.